Nature doesn't always act at random. Sometimes it suddenly pulls itself together and makes shapes so precise, as if they were drawn with a ruler. Perfect circles, straight lines, flawless hexagons. Today, 15 cases when nature creates incredible figures. I wish you a really good rest and an enjoyable viewing. And in first place, a thing that looks maximally set up, as if someone rolled snow as a joke. These are snow rollers, cylinders or donuts of snow that form on their own, without people or animals. Often they even have a hollow inside, like a roll. And yes, this happens in open places, on the Great Plains of North America, in Canada, and also in Northern and Central Europe. For them to appear, you need 5 conditions at once. And if even one doesn't match, nothing will work. Underneath, there must be an icy or hard crust of snow, usually after a thaw and refreezing. It's needed so the new snow doesn't stick to the ground. On top, fresh wet snow must fall. Sticky, but not slush and not a rock. The temperature is usually around 0 degrees Celsius, a little below or a little above. Wind is needed, strong enough to shift the snow, but not so strong that it destroys everything. About 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, that range is often called a lucky one. The terrain must be flat or with a slight slope, so wind and gravity help it roll. And most importantly, minimal obstacles. Stones, bushes, and bumps break the shape or stop the roller. When everything matches, a small piece of the upper snow layer gets picked up by the wind or starts sliding. It rolls, and a new layer of snow sticks to it, as if a roll is being wound up. That's how a cylinder forms, sometimes with a hollow inside. The sizes vary, more often 20 to 50 centimeters, but cases of more than a meter are known. They are very fragile and don't live long, but when they appear en masse, it looks like a scene from a movie. For example, in January 2014, thousands of snow rollers were spotted in the states of Ohio and Pennsylvania. Entire fields were covered with them. Similar reports appeared earlier too, in Illinois in 2003, in Sweden in 2010. Today, such cases spread quickly through the news and social media because it looks too perfect. But in reality, it's just nature, which for a minute assembled the ideal set of conditions and made a shape that a person wouldn't even manage to repeat on the first try. Now, Japan and what they nicknamed underwater circles in the sand. In 2011, researchers discovered amazing patterns on the seafloor. Large, very precise circles, sometimes up to 2 meters in diameter. It looks as if someone was drawing with a ruler. But it's not geology and not a current. This is made by a small pufferfish. And not by accident, but for the most important goal, to find a mate. The male builds such a circle over several days, working only with his fins. He digs grooves and ridges in the sand, forming a pattern with rays. In the center, an even platform around it, neat rings and ribs like a huge ornament. Why? It's a signal for the female. Look how skilled I am. But there's also a practical meaning. The ribs direct the water so that the current brings finer, softer sand into the center. That is exactly where the female can then lay eggs in a more stable place. The precision is astonishing, an almost perfect radial symmetry, equal gaps between. Nature doesn't always act at random. Sometimes it suddenly pulls itself together and makes shapes so precise, as if they were drawn with a ruler. Perfect circles, straight lines, flawless hexagons. Today, 15 cases when nature creates incredible figures. I wish you a really good rest and an enjoyable viewing. Next place, Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. Many people know it because of the sailing stones. But there is one more thing there that looks like someone's project. Neat polygons appear on the ground, often resembling hexagons or pentagons, and they occupy large flat areas. These patterns arise because of repeating cycles. Sometimes the surface gets wet, then dries. Sometimes there is freezing, then changes again, and so many times. When rare water spreads across the flat surface, the soil becomes wet. Then the water evaporates, the ground dries out and shrinks, and a network of cracks appears on the surface. With each new cycle, the cracks become more and more organized. Stress in the layer is distributed evenly, and it is advantageous for nature to cut the surface into repeating shapes. That's why polygons appear, most often iminohexagons, because that divides the surface most evenly and economically. Aerial and satellite images confirm. These patterns can stretch across large areas, keeping similar sizes and distances between the cracks. And unlike chaotic cracks on other dried lakes, here the Rarest looks especially neat, because the soil is fairly uniform. Geometric tiles look as if they were specially laid, but in reality it's just physics, predictable, repeatable, and very beautiful. Nummer 1. Now, one of the most incredible examples, Pyrite cubes in northern Spain. Pyrite is called fool's gold because of its shine, but the main thing here is different. It can grow in the form of very regular crystals, and sometimes, literally, as almost perfect cubes. These little cubes look as if they were polished, smooth flat faces, clear 90-degree angles, mirror-like shine. And at the same time, they are natural, formed over millions of years underground. Pyrite is found in many countries, but there are places where cubes are especially frequent and clean. In some rock outcrops, you can find Desatki cubes next to each other. Many of them formed right there, rather than being carried by water. They sit in the rock confidently and evenly. The size is impressive too. Some specimens reach up to 10 centimeters along an edge. And precisely because of the ideal shape, such crystals are often used in education to show how macroscopic geometry grows from the microscopic order of molecules. And now, imagine a soap bubble, only made of lava. Under the hardened crust of ancient lava flows, thin-walled hollow spheres or domes are sometimes found. They are called lava bubbles or blisters. In rare cases, they turn out so even that they resemble gigantic frozen spheres. Most often, such structures are found in lava tubes and underground chambers, in areas with active or ancient lava flows. For example, in Hawaii, in Iceland, and in other volcanic territories. Usually, the bubble bursts or collapses. The gas escapes, the crust cracks, the lava cools unevenly. But if the conditions are ideal, the lava is fluid enough, cooling goes slowly, and there are few vibrations and razrushenia around, the obolochka can survive and solidify like a hollow shell. Geologists describe such structures in Hawaii's lava systems, where the underground environment is more stable and thin forms have a chance to survive. Sometimes they even look too correct, which is why they are mistaken for man-made objects, especially when they appear in groups along the walls or ceiling of a lava tube. What's also interesting is that lava tubes are considered analogs for other planets. On the Moon and Mars, signs of lava tubes are found, and theoretically there could also have been similar bubble domes there. Some collapsed, and some could have survived. So even in the most harsh and dangerous process, an eruption, nature is able to produce ideal geometry. Snowflakes seem simply beautiful, but the main thing here is geometry. Most snow crystals are built around the same foundation, hexagonal symmetry. That means the shape again and again repeats one principle, as if nature has a favorite template. Each snowflake begins as a tiny ice crystal, high in the atmosphere. While it falls, water molecules stick to it, and it grows. There are endlessly many shape variants, but the basic ice lattice is eustrona, so that growth most often goes in 6 directions, and you get 6-rayed symmetry. And snowflakes are not only little stars. Depending on temperature and humidity, they can become plates, columns, needles, or even columns with a cap. But even the simplest forms, like thin ice pillars in dry Morozny air, still preserve this hexagonal base. Back in 1611, Johannes Kepler tried to explain why snowflakes have 6 sides. He suggested that the reason was in how particles line up naturally. Modern scientists grow snowflakes in special cold chambers and photograph them under a microscope. The details are different for each one, but the geometric foundation remains the same. That's how beautifully the laws of nature work. Billions and trillions of times in a single winter. Next, a place with a legendary name. Devil's Postpile, California, near Mammoth Mountain. There stand almost Rovni vertical posts of basalt, and many of them have a hexagonal cross-section. It looks as if someone cut the stone on a giant machine tool. In reality, it all began with a lava flow about 100,000 years ago. The lava spread out and then began to cool slowly. And here's the key. When a large volume of rock cools evenly, it contracts and cracks in such a way that the stress is distributed in the most convenient way. As a result, the rock splits into long prisms, often specifically hexagonal ones. There are thousands of such columns here. Visible pillars are usually 30 to 60 centimeters wide and can rise to more than 18 meters. And if you look from above at the cross-sections of the columns, you get almost honeycombs. The angles between the faces are often close to 120 degrees. That is typical for hexagonal packing, when space is filled as evenly as possible. Sometimes columns with 5 or 7 sides occur. That is due to small differences in cooling speed and rock composition. But the overall structure remains very regular. The place is studied and monitored for stability, because rockfalls are possible, but the geometry itself has stood for a very long time and continues to amaze everyone, from tourists to scientists. A desert rose is a mineral that looks like a flower. In reality, it is crystals, most often gypsum or buried, that grew in a way that resembles petals. They are found in arid regions all over the world, in the southwestern United States, in Mexico, Tunisia, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, and other places. The trick is that this is a completely non-living process. In sandy or dusty layers, where there is a lot of evaporation, groundwater can be saturated with the necessary minerals. The water leaves, and the minerals begin to crystallize. As the crystals grow, grains of sand get locked inside. And because of that, the crystal grows as flat plates. They spread out from the center, and petals are formed. The sizes can be very different, from a few centimeters to huge specimens of more than a meter. And the angles and directions of the petals are connected to how the internal structure of the crystal is arranged. In some places, there are so many such roses that they cover entire areas of ground. For example, in the Sahara in Tunisia, entire fields of gypsum roses were found, partially buried in sand. For geologists, this is also important because such crystals can store information about the past composition of the water and the conditions of the environment, like a natural archive. And yes, because of their strange appearance, they are often mistaken for artifacts or fossils. But it is pure geology, a neat form made by time, water, and chemistry. Imagine, lightning strikes sand and leaves behind glass tubes. These are called Fulgurites. The temperature of a lightning bolt can be up to 30,000 Kelvin. That is about 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. From such heat, quartz sand instantly melts and then quickly cools and solidifies as glass. Often you get hollow tubes, sometimes with branching. They follow the path along which the electricity broke through the ground. Simply put, it went where resistance was lower. That's why the shapes don't look chaotic, but like a system of passages with a clear logic. The length can be from a few centimeters to more than 2 meters. The walls are thin, sometimes only a few millimeters. And although the material is fragile, Fulgurites can lie underground for thousands of years if the soil is dry and stable. They are hard to find. Often they are completely hidden underground, and only a small entry trace is visible on the surface. When excavating, they break easily, so intact specimens are rare. They are kept in museums and collections and studied by geologists and materials specialists. Fulgurites have been found on beaches, in deserts, on sandy plains, in the United States, Australia, Africa, and other places. This is real evidence of past lightning strikes, and sometimes it even helps in investigations of fires or traces of thunderstorm activity. Nature literally makes glass and also manages to formulate it into geometry. Stromatolites are layered mounds, or columns that grow thanks to microscopic organisms, most often cyanobacteria. They seem to build stone in layers. Microbes form a film, it traps particles, a new layer settles on top, and so again and again. Today, living stromatolites are rare, but they can be found in a few places, for example in Shark Bay, Western Australia, and also in some lakes of Mexico and in the Bahamas. But fossilized stromatolites more than 3.5 billion years old are found all over the world. This is one of the oldest records of life on Earth. The form of a stromatolite is the result of cooperation between the living and the non-living. Microbes grow in shallow water, catch sediment particles, layers accumulate. Growth goes very slowly, sometimes fractions of a millimeter per year. And it is exactly this slowness that makes them so even. Sharp changes are smoothed out by time. In some places, for example, where the water is very salty, there are few enemies and competitors, so the forms of stromatolites remain stable for centuries. Although they are built by microorganisms, the geometry obeys physics: water flow, light, particle adhesion, buoyancy. This is an example of how even the simplest life can create repeatable, neat structures, almost like architecture, only stretched across centuries. On the coast of New Zealand, on the beaches of the Otago region, dozens of huge stone balls lie, the Moeraki boulders. They look as if a giant scattered marble spheres. But these are not sculptures and not alien technologies. This is a natural process, which is called the formation of a stone sphere around a center over millions of years. These boulders are mostly made of mudstone cemented by minerals like calcite. Their shape is surprisingly round, which in geology is not common. The diameter is usually from 0.5 meter to 2 meters, and some reach 3 meters. Many boulders are covered with cracks like a turtle shell. These are the so-called internal seams, which appear when something inside dries out and contracts as it grows. How does it all begin? On the bottom of an ancient sea, thin sediments accumulated: silt, clay, fine sand. Inside these layers, there were organic remains. When they decomposed, substances were released that triggered mineral precipitation. The main thing is that the conditions are stable: temperature, pressure, and the chemical composition of the water. Then, minerals build up evenly in all directions, and the circle turns out almost perfect. Studies show that the formation began about 55 to 60 million years ago. Then, the land rose. Soft rocks gradually razrashalis, and the spherical boulders came out to the surface. Scientists take cores, look at the growth rings inside the boulder, almost like in a tree. By the composition, you can understand the temperature and chemistry of the ancient environment, reconstruct the history of the region. These boulders are proof that precise geometry can appear slowly and invisibly, without any plan, just water, sediment, and time. In the coldest places on the planet, the ground itself draws huge networks of figures, most often hexagons, but pentagons, heptagons, and other shapes are also found. This is called polygonal ground pattern and occurs in permafrost zones, Canada, Siberia, Greenland, Alaska, and also Antarctica. The mechanism is simple and juicy. In winter, the upper layer cools strongly and contracts. Stress grows in it, and it cracks. The cracks intersect in the way that is more convenient from the point of view of stress distribution, and they often meet at about 120 degrees, so hexagons come out very naturally. There are two main variants. The first, when water gets into the cracks, it freezes, expands, and over time forms an ice wedge. Such ice wedges can go several meters deep and push the soil apart to the sides. The second, when stones and fine soil gradually get sorted because of constant freeze-thaw cycles. Heavy and large shifts differently than fine. The soil seems to mix itself and lay the materials out into places. The size of the polygons depends on conditions. In wetter places, they are smaller and denser. In cold and dry places, they are larger, sometimes up to 20 meters across. And today, this is also an important indicator. Because of climate change, researchers track how these polygons deform, how ice wedges subside, where water appears in depressions. That is, it's not just a beautiful pattern, but a signal of how stable the permafrost is. And at the same time, the entire pattern is created purely by physics, the regular breathing of freezing ground. When people talk about ideal shapes in nature, many immediately think of hexagons and columns. But in Hawaii, there is an even more interesting example. Columns that formed in unusual rock, and at the same time were essentially caught by scientists during observations. The story begins in 1959, when one of the most studied eruptions of the Kilauea volcano occurred. A lava lake about 50 meters deep formed in the crater. The lava gradually cooled and turned into stone, and USGS researchers began to actively study the process. In 1960, they drilled a borehole and discovered vertical columns with almost regular polygonal cross-sections. Some were only a few centimeters wide, but went vertically down for meters. Usually such columns are associated with basalt. But here a similar structure arose in layers of dense rock, rich in minerals, that are more often found deeper in the earth. The columns looked like neat prisms, even width, clear faces, and for some, the angles were also close to 120 degrees. The coolest part is the observability. Scientists recorded how the front of solidification moved downward at about 2 meters per month in the early stages and linked this to the appearance of cracks in geometry. That is, it was almost a living lesson. Cooling, contraction, correct rock, seams. Understanding such processes is important not only for volcanoes. It helps geophysicists read signals in deep rocks and even compare with other planets. On the Moon and Mars, there are fractured structures that can be explained by similar contraction during cooling. So even under extreme temperatures and pressure, nature is able to switch on order and assemble stone into ideal columns. In limestone caves around the world, from Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico to caves of Cuba, Laos, and Slovenia, sometimes you can find almost perfect little balls that look like beads. These are cave pearls. They consist mainly of calcium carbonate, the same mineral from which stalactites and stalagmites grow. Everything begins with a small nucleus, a grain of sand, a crumb of rock, a bit of organic matter, anything. It ends up in a shallow pool inside a cave where the water is saturated with dissolved minerals. The mineral begins to precipitate, forming layer after layer around the nucleus. And here is an important moment. Water drips from above, slightly stirs the pool, and makes the blank roll around. Because of this, growth doesn't stretch in one direction. It goes evenly over the entire surface. And that's how a sphere comes out. In meaning, it resembles a pearl in a shell, only the mechanism is different and the material is different. In some caves, pearls lie in whole scatterings, covering the bottom. The largest known specimens reach up to 6 centimeters, but more often, they are less than 2 centimeters. Although not everyone knows about them, for cave and mineral researchers, this is an interesting topic. Here you can see how precise geometry arises from a combination of chemistry, motion, and time. In darkness and humidity, layer by layer, nature builds a sphere as if it had a lathe,